So, everybody, welcome to episode 23 of my podcast. And this time I welcome Duncan Greenaway, who is the director and managing director and founder of Greenaway Architects, based in, I'm right, Duncan, in London and in the Cotswolds. Is that right?
That's correct. Hi, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on and for speaking to our audience. And yeah, please introduce yourself and your practice and the work that you're involved in.
So we started Greenaway Architecture about 10 years ago in January, and we've worked on all sorts of projects from sort of large student housing schemes to house extensions, um, generally contemporary architecture, but we deal with a lot of listed buildings, conservation areas, AONBs.
Yeah,
We love the variety of scale and type of project, um, and we love the challenge of turning something into something much better. Um, and I think architecture is an incredibly rewarding profession in that sense, is that you get to see people. Um, uh, you can make a huge difference to people's lives through improving their environments, whether it's where they
absolutely.
work, live, shop, travel. It's great.
Well, your practice is I don't know if unusual is the right word, but it's different in so much as the projects you're involved in. You've shared a few with us already, whether it be as you mentioned already, student accommodation through to high-end residential schemes. A lot of practices will focus on just one core element, where it's brilliant that you're working across different disciplines.
Yeah, I worked for a few different practices and types of business in property and architecture before
Yeah,
I set Greenaway Architecture up, and yeah, with each one that specialised in one sector or part of the industry,
hmm.
I felt like I was missing out on the others. And then, so we really enjoy working for the variety, and I think you can bring something really interesting to each one,
Yeah.
learnings from the other sectors. So I think variety is really important.
Yeah, absolutely, and all credit to you because, like I say, it's a different approach, but it's clearly working. And some of the work that you've done is fabulous, and you've
Thank you.
you've clearly found your kind of niche, which is working very well. So the practice itself, then, obviously we've mentioned you're working on all these different projects and from around the world. Actually, is that right? Not just here in the UK.
We have some international projects, but mostly in the UK, and our clients are quite international, but most of the projects are here. But they are everywhere from Norfolk to Cornwall, London, South Coast, Cotswolds, and up north as well. So
Okay.
um, we get about a bit.
And
We don't specify a region. We just love
yeah,
working on different projects.
that's really good because again, a lot of people stay local to where they're based, obviously for logistical reasons. Are you? So is it word of mouth mainly that your work comes to you?
It must be. I
Yeah.
believe so. We haven't done much sort of marketing or social media or press or anything. Architecture takes a long time. So in the 10 years it's been going, sort of concepts, planning, building, and then we finished a few projects in the recent years, which have seemed to have been popular with press and awards and things. So
Yeah.
we've received a bit of coverage that way, which has been nice. But I believe it's still mostly word of mouth. Yeah.
Which has been how's the office set up? Is there how many staff members are there? How is it made up?
So we're a small practice. We change in size depending on when fantastic people come to us. And then sometimes we have students go back to university and things.
Hmm.
So we're a handful of people, and we're based in London and Cotswolds. And we move around wherever the projects are. We don't move houses or offices, but
Yeah.
we go to sites and things.
uh,
Um, so yeah,
that's really
a
good.
lot of
And
different topographies and
yeah.
things that we encounter. Everything from urban high streets to coastal cliffs and fields, and it's good.
Which is brilliant. So, um, what's kind of on the drawing board at the moment? Anything in particular of interest to talk about?
We've just won a really nice planning consent in Cornwall
Okay.
on the north coast
Yep.
for a really contemporary extension to a listed barn that used to be a farm building, a stone building. So refurbishing that, and then a really contemporary extension in Core 10 is quite sculptural.
Okay.
And then houses in the Cotswolds. I really enjoyed working with sort of local materials, stone and timber, but in a contemporary way, so they're contextual but of their time.
Yeah.
Conversions of some farm buildings in Norfolk. We had a housing scheme up in sort of Melton Mowbray, which is sort of 10 dwellings, contemporary new homes, if you like. What else have we got? All sorts. I lose track. A whole variety of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. Again, it's testament to the work that you do, that you've got across the country such a broad plane of a variety of different projects, coupled with a strong pipeline of work. You hear of some practices that are not necessarily scrabbling around for work, but perhaps wondering where the next will come from. Whereas it's nice to see that you've got a huge pipeline ahead of you, which is brilliant.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Long may it last.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've sent us some projects to feature, which we have done in the magazine, which are kind of, you mentioned earlier, you alluded to some kind of student accommodation that you've done. Is that kind of fairly regular for you, or does that come up as and when?
Well, I think it's like all of these things. They come up as and when. It's obviously a long process to find land, acquire it, get planning for it. So we've looked at a number of student housing schemes. We've built two, one in Brighton,
Yeah,
one in Southwark, Bermondsey, and we're looking at others. But it takes a long time. I hope the government finds a way to speed these things up.
yeah. There's been a few things only this morning actually on LinkedIn about the planning process. I suppose you get to see, you specifically working with different local authorities around the country. Do you see others perform better than or worse than others, or is it a fairly kind of broad brush? Do you see?
Certainly, some perform better than others.
Yeah,
It often comes down to the officer.
yeah,
I think some officers are great and they have vision and courage, and others seem to be afraid. So tend to add friction to the process unnecessarily. I do think there's a massive cultural sort of barrier in this country that a lot of people seem to love the newest phone, car, television, food. But when it comes to buildings, they think that they should look like red brick, pitched roof,
yeah,
portico. And that's what the big housing developers seem to build all over the country.
yeah,
I never know whether people buy those because it's what's available, or they build those because it's what people want, or they think that's what people want.
yeah.
But I think it's really regressive, and I would relish a cultural shift towards better design. People demand good design in every other walk of their life. Like I said, be it a car or a telephone,
Yeah.
people are looking at the latest design and cutting edge, and then it comes to buildings, and there seems to be something very Victorian about the way we build. The Victorians were brilliant, but we have hardly progressed in many respects in hundreds of years. And it's time for change because building's too expensive,
Yeah.
not sustainable enough, and it's become out of reach of so many. And got to find a way to make homes more affordable.
So
A good design, and
yeah.
through design, there are solutions, but we need people to want to embrace it a bit more. I mean, you look at Holland and other parts of Europe; they really embrace contemporary architecture,
Yeah.
contextual temporary architecture.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're there yet. But
How do you overcome the challenge? I've had this from others that I've spoken to. Again, you're dealing with different local authorities around the country. The general public that just simply won't understand, and I know this from friends of mine, the length of time the planning policies can take, and they think, okay, we'll instruct an architect, they can get on with it, we can get started and get the builder in a couple of months, and then they realise 18 months later, planning still hasn't been granted. Is that something part of your job is to obviously speak to your client, the end user, and explain, well, look, it's now sits with the local authority, and they have an 18-month backlog.
They certainly do have backlogs, and I do feel for them. I think they're probably massively understaffed. But there do seem to be a lot of unnecessary barriers thrown up. Sometimes it takes a very long time to get a planning application validated, which
Yeah,
is when the planning timing starts.
yeah,
But sometimes our planning application has been validated after the 8 weeks after we've submitted them.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a crazy system.
yeah.
And I'm sure the officers are doing their absolute best, but maybe they're understaffed, or what I think would be really helpful. And I met a really interesting group of people. It doesn't feature everywhere, but they put architects into planning departments.
Okay,
And I think that there need to be more architects in planning departments to help understanding, take some of the workload,
yeah,
and just improve the process. The process is just not, it's not working. And the government talk about growth. We need more homes. We need more growth in many respects. But if it's too hard in this country to get architecture through the planning system.
I suppose conversely, would it help you at all if you engaged directly with a planning officer to come and work for you? I suppose they may know the insider knowledge to
I mean,
make an
we actually have a lot of success with planning,
yeah,
but quite often clients come to us having had one or two refusals before, and the clients are a bit bemused by the system, and then we get them planning. But I shouldn't complain in that respect, but it's just there's too much friction,
yeah,
and I think that the planners don't have time to engage as much as they could or should, and that's definitely somewhere that could be improved.
yeah.
I miss the days when we used to be able to have a conversation with sketch paper and pens, and
Yeah,
but it's very hard to get hold of planners now.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking probably back in the 90s now, aren't we? Probably it's
Yeah,
a long
yeah,
time ago, but there's a lot to be said for that. I'm relatively old school in certain things that I do, and I think the face-to-face meeting and actually discussing these things outright works better. But there's lots of constraints, lots of time restraints, lots of funding
yeah.
issues and everything
I
else.
think it comes down to resources. And I
Yeah,
was speaking to a planner a while ago, and I said, how come it takes so long,
yeah,
and so forth. And they said, we don't have the resources. And I said, what can be done? And they said, well, the planning fees are too low. And if you submit a planning application for a house extension, it might be £270. And I mean, it is difficult for a
yeah,
local department to properly administer an application for £270.
yeah,
And, if sometimes a client is looking to spend, say, 50, 100, £150,000 on extension, they would rather pay £500 and have the planning application properly resourced than
yeah,
pay 250, 270, and not receive an answer for months.
yeah, yeah. It's the whole
Um,
thing. It's been talked about quite widely, hasn't it? The whole system needs a bit of a reform, doesn't it? But
it certainly does, and it has done for a very long time. And every successive government says we're going to reform this, we're going to change this, we're going to improve it.
yeah,
And to my absolute amazement, they don't,
hmm,
which is odd, particularly because it's in their own interest to do it. Because we have a shortage of housing, and there are lots of companies, individuals looking to provide that housing at their own expense,
yeah,
and pursue good design. And they make it incredibly hard.
yeah,
They really must find a way to improve it. And the great Lord Rogers, Richard Rogers, was talking about this decades ago now, and nothing's
yeah,
changed. But sometimes things don't change until they're absolutely forced to. But we
yeah,
have a true housing crisis now, and it's only got worse since COVID because construction materials have gone up,
They have, yeah.
and so sooner the better. Needs a reform.
And with your going back to your, obviously you're 10 years old now as a business from January. You've spoken about all the projects you've got going on from the Cotswolds to Cornwall and everywhere else in between. How does the kind of future for the practice look then? What's your kind of next year plan? Do you look to grow and expand further, or what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm really excited, first of all, and it's wonderful when we're lucky enough to meet clients who want to do exciting things.
Yeah,
We like I, I want us to stay small because um, I I like us working intensely on the projects we have and giving them all of our attention and skill and care. I do worry about you know growing in terms of sheer numbers and size,
yeah,
in terms of just paying as much attention as we do to the projects.
yeah.
We, um, but we'll see how it goes. Um, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Well, you're in a the ideal situation where you're small enough to be able to move and adapt, and that's a brilliant business model, isn't it? Really, because if you grow to
Agile,
become
key,
too
yeah,
big with tens upon tens of staff, that's the route you go down.
yeah,
You're able to work anywhere in the country at the drop of a hat, and that's the way it's obviously gone well for you.
yeah. But just in the way we try to be as agile as possible with our designs, we
Yeah,
need to be the same as a business. When businesses grow too big, especially if they grow too quickly, you have to bring in sort of formulaic approach, and then the projects start to look the same. But the projects have no sites are the same.
no.
So every project needs a bespoke response, which makes architecture quite an inefficient business in many ways. But
Do you have a team of consultants, like structural engineers, for example, building surveyors? Do you have a team that you use to call in, or dependent upon the project in the country, you just use
it,
who's
it
ever
all,
available? Or
it's always somewhat dependent on the project and the region and things.
yeah,
But we do have consultants that we really enjoy working with and have had a lot of success over the years.
yeah,
So that would be a sort of default. But if we go to a new area and there's a particular consultant who is a real specialist in that area for whatever they do,
yeah,
then we're really open to working with new people, etc.
brilliant. Well, it sounds like obviously the business model is brilliant. The work that you've done, certainly the work you've shared. I know you've got another project to send across to us to share in the magazine as well, and which I will drive the audience to, and to your website, and the work that you do. I know you list your projects on your own website, so it's brilliant for anybody to want to see the work that you've done historically to go directly to your site to see, or again, onto Architecture Vogue magazine. But well, look, it's been brilliant to hear the work that you do, and to share with our audience, your background and your history and your plans for the future, basically. So, yeah, thank you for coming on and for sharing that with us, and for your insights in the world of architecture, basically from your eyes. It's been nice to hear and talk about.
Thank you very much, Nick. Much appreciated. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, Duncan. All the very best.
All the best.